So great. Thank you very much. We have quorum. So I would, with the members of the GCHRC committee, please indicate any in-camera meeting agenda items which they have a conflict of interest, together with the nature of that conflict, if there are any.
Public meeting, Brian.
Yeah. Pardon?
You said in camera. It's public meeting.
Oh, sorry, no, public meeting, sorry, yes. Just to give a few opening remarks, I want to say that, you know, we've got a lot of items that we need to address, but I'm wanting to add one additional item in new business with regards to the relocation of TCHC as part of the city's strategy. So I'd like to add that under new business, if we could add that to the agenda, please. Do I need a motion on that, or is that just okay, Darryl?
I think you can raise the matter when we reach item 10, which is the new business item on the agenda, and the committee can consider any motion at that point in time.
Are there any items on the agenda that directors would like to hold?
Just on the matters arising, it's just a clarification, actually, under the vendor policy.
Okay. Is that under?
It's under the action items.
Action items. Okay.
Action items number 1.
Yeah, hold that for. So first of all, we need a motion to approve the agenda items and hold the item with regards to business arising for that one item. Darryl.
So, subject to the chair's comment with respect to an item of new business to be addressed in item 5, the motion would provide that the committee approves the agenda for the meeting and all matters on the agenda with the exception of item 5. And again, the effect of the motion is that we won't hold the other items 6 through 9. They'll be simply adopted by the committee as a result of this motion, and the committee has the opportunity to discuss items 5 and then the item of new business, Mr. Chair.
I just had one other question, Darryl. We did have a deputation, a written deputation that came in, but I wasn't quite sure what item that referred to, because it didn't seem to connect with one of the existing items on the agenda. So I'm not quite sure how to handle that. I mean, I obviously read it, but I don't know. It really didn't, in my view, pertain to a specific item on the agenda. How do we need to address that?
I think that we will note in the minutes that the item was received by the committee, but is unrelated. It appears unrelated to items on today's agenda.
Okay, and maybe someone could get back to the deputant and ask her to direct it to the appropriate item with either the board or the committee, or the appropriate committee.
Understood.
Okay, so could we have a mover for the motion to approve the agenda items, the minutes, and except for those item on the business arising and the new item. So we'll ask for a motion for that. Uba, would you move that? Thank you. And Marcel, would you second that? Thank you. All those in favor? Motion's carried. So we should move now to the question that we had with regards to business arising with vendors. Debbie, do you want to raise your question now?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Brian. It's just so long ago, but my understanding of the request to staff was around a vendor policy. So what policy exists to ensure equity in how it is that we contract with vendors, as well as to get a sense, and as part of that work, to do a review in terms of the demographics of the vendors. Who are vendors currently? How representative are they of racial equity groups, of women-led organizations, etc. This only speaks to, I have two questions actually, or two concerns. This only speaks to the demographic information, and there is no timeline attached to that demographic information. My concern is that this is not contextualized. What we really want is a vendor policy. The City of Toronto has a vendor policy, doesn't implement it very well, but they do have a vendor policy. And that is something I think that TCHC needs to have as well. And this came up in the context of just tens of millions of dollars we've been spending on redevelopment and paying attention to how it is that we contract with vendors, but also internally to TCHC at the local level in terms of when you're hiring vendors to come in to do cleaning, to look at whatever else we hire people to do. How is it that you're ensuring that they are representative of the City of Toronto? I'm not sure who I'm asking that question to. Jag, I guess it's you.
No, so we have Albert Koch. He's our Senior Director of Procurement, who's here to address.
Hi.
Thank you, Albert.
Yeah, sorry about this. I jumped on halfway through your question. I just got the invitation. So if you could just, if you don't mind, just summarize it. That would be.
Last year, we raised the issue of vendors that TCHC engages, and we wanted, with the end result being a vendor policy for the corporation. Part of that work is to do a review of current vendors. And so what has come back to the board looks at a review of current vendors, and we seem to be missing the reason why we're looking at the demographics of current vendors is because we're wanting to lead to a vendor policy. So the question is, how do you ensure that the vendors that you procure to do work with TCHC is representative of the business community here in Toronto? We're looking at smaller vendors, racialized vendors, women-led companies, those kinds of things.
So there's two, I think I have two responses to that question. One is in response to a question that was asked at the last, I have trouble with the acronym for this meeting, so I apologize. But
please call it the Governance Committee.
Yeah, thank you, the Governance Committee. We are right now, one of the questions was asked for us to go back and look at how we get more medium-sized vendors involved in our procurements at TCHC. So that's something we're working on right now. A second piece that we're working on, which is a much bigger piece, is a social procurement policy. And part of this social procurement policy will be looking at how we can promote work for tenant-led businesses, but not only tenant-led businesses, businesses led by, for example, your example, women-led businesses or businesses led by representatives from marginalized communities, or businesses led by representatives from marginalized communities. We've been in conversations with some Black-led organizations that represent, sort of represent a greater number of businesses, have those conversations. So those are the two pieces we're working on right now.
Maybe you can explain to me, because there are no timelines, and my concern that is that it said once CABR completes its something. My system isn't working, so I can't pull up my notes from Sonia. If someone can just put up the item, please, just so I have the language in front of me.
Sorry, give me 1 second. Oh, I think Sonia's got it.
So Director Douglas, if I may assist in this one, typically what I ask is that each division works with our CABR group, as in, of course, with Evelyn, and to ensure that we are in applying that CABR lens to the policies that we're putting in place. So what the expectation is that Evelyn will be working with Roseanne and Albert in order to ensure as part of that policy development.
Okay, so yeah, I didn't understand what to be reported after divisional CABR work plan is established for procurement. That was the concern I had. What does that mean?
So I'm not, the wording may be off just a little bit, Director Douglas, but essentially what it is that to ensure that the CABR work group is involved in the policy development for that social procurement policy.
Let's see, okay.
And so that they'll be working with them in order to ensure that the input is provided as we develop that policy.
It will be helpful if we had a timeline to work against, because yes, as you can see, this is more than a year since we've been having this conversation. So it would be good to get a sense of when we can expect something back as a committee.
So Director Douglas, if it's acceptable to you, then and through the chair, that could we, I don't know that the team would be able to provide that timeline now, but could we
not at all, yeah,
circulate it to the committee soon, very soon, that will circulate a timeline to the committee.
That would be helpful, thank you.
Maybe you can add it when you've got it into the next
Committee
meetings items there. So I want to apologize because I turned 2 pages and missed a whole page because I really didn't do the
acknowledgement,
and that I jumped right into business, and for that I ask for your forgiveness. And you know, again, good morning to all the committee members, and of course all the public who may want to see the business of our committee as we are dealing with it today. And I want to specifically recognize the land acknowledgement. So let me begin with the acknowledgement that the land that each of us is on as we hold this virtual meeting is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now the home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and I again apologize for not doing that at the beginning, as it's a very important thing that we need to reflect on each and every time we meet. I also wanted to mention, and we may have addressed it already, but one of the items is with regards to the naming of buildings, both in the TCHC, but also with regards to the Seniors Housing Corporation. And we've had a request some time ago to consider the building at 3036 Bathurst Street in honor of former City Councillor Michael Feldman. And 2 reports are on the agenda for the committee's information, which include also the annual compliance report and annual update of the subsidiaries. And I've also asked to put on the agenda item, a item to reflect the and look at the relocation of the TCHC operations as decided by the City Council, and I just have an item that I would like to add under new business. So I just wanted to apologize for not doing that at the beginning of the meeting and jumping right into business. So
What's your new item, Brian, exactly? Did we move it on?
the item is I'm trying to remember the city council adopted a development strategy for a number of properties, which includes 931 Yonge Street, and contemplates market offering process for 931. That's not a problem as far as I can see. It's more my question or item is a relocation question, and I just wanted to put that on the agenda under new business. So it's not
relocation of TCHC operations in light of the
operations.
yeah. Thank you.
So that's just I have a question on that, and just wanted some feedback
I think that's fine.
Future meeting.
Well, I think maybe we should have some here overview of where it's at. I don't think we've really gotten into that. Make sure that everything's where we need it to be.
So we've now can move right to item number.
Sorry, Brad, I think Mr. Chair, I think we still need a motion then, if there are no further questions in relation to item 5, to receive the action item update.
So Debbie, if you feel satisfied, could you move the motion?
Yes, I will. I move the motion.
Thank you. Could we have a seconder? Uba? All those in favor? Item 5 is carried. Thank you.
And then I think we can move, Mr. Chair, to item 10, which is the new business item that you wanted to identify.
So this is get my little note here. Really, with regard to the city making the decision for a number of properties, including 931 Yonge Street. And I was wanting to raise the question because it is important. Every item that we look at needs to be put through the tenant lens to ensure that it's in the best interest of tenants. And I just wanted, I'm not sure whether it's back at city staff or city council, but and in consultation, obviously, with TCHC, the relocation of the TCHC offices eventually, to make sure they're going to serve tenants in the best possible way. I don't know whether this is fact or rumor, but I know there's the possibility of moving to Metro Hall. But I just wonder whether that has been considered through the lens of tenants, because if we want tenants to be engaged and be involved, knowing from my own past history, Metro Hall is not the easiest place to get to. So I just wondered whether we need to put that through the lens. I have no problem with moving. It's just a question of if we're going to move, let's do it in the best interest of tenants. And that's the question I'm putting forward. And I've put together a little motion here, which I'll I'll read, and then obviously people can jump in and there. So whereas at the meeting of April the 6th and April the 7th, 2022, City Council adopted a development strategy for a number of properties, which included 931 Yonge Street, and contemplates a market offering process for 931 Yonge Street. And whereas the report considered by council at that time contemplates the TCHC staff working in its head office will be relocated to the Civic Center network. And whereas despite Toronto Community Housing Corporation's adoption of a hub model, 931 Yonge Street continues to provide a service location for tenants of Toronto Community Housing, including the location for in-person board and committee meetings. Therefore, it is recommended that the Governance, Communications, and Human Resources Committee requests that the board request city staff to report to the Tenant Services Committee on the manner in which service to TCHC tenants will be addressed as part of the proposed relocation of TCHC staff from 931 Yonge Street to the Civic Center network in order to ensure that tenants' needs are considered as part of this process. And so I've just wanted, because, you know, I mean, we're meeting virtually now, and that's been great under the conditions we have. But it's hopefully in the future, and I think it's important that we can meet hopefully in person, and that we also, tenants can come in person to those meetings. And as we know, not everybody has access or good access to the technology, and some people prefer, and in many ways outside of the meeting, it's always great to have opportunities to have informal conversations with tenants before and after those meetings. So I just think that we need to consider the impact on tenants in any move that's going to take place, so that it will be beneficial for tenants and improve our relationship with tenants rather than putting another hurdle in their way. So I just open it for any comments that committee members might want to make.
I have one, Brian.
Paula.
I think your motion is good motion, and I think it should also reference tenants first, because that's a city policy to put tenants first. So I don't know if that lens was used. That did happen in April 6th and 7th. I'm not privy to all of the various conversations that have gone on, but I'd have to say this is depending on the timing. And I think, Jag, I'm going to ask you, what's the timing of that, particularly with the market getting soft the way it is? What have you been told?
Through you, Chair Smith, Councillor Fletcher, our understanding at this point, and once again, this is draft, is that it would be late 2023, early 2024, as far as a move opportunity to Metro Hall.
So there's a lot of planning for that. I'm wondering if we could have, again, I'd say this is one of those ones that the board needs to be advised of. This is happening, what some of the implications are. Make sure everything's been, get the thinking of the board, like Brian's tenants first. Is that the lens that was used here? And anything else? Because they're making decisions about things perhaps without looking at the operational impacts on this particular corporation. So again, I'm just going to say this is an important issue. We shouldn't get too close to that date and then find out there's any problems of any kind. So I'm going to ask that somehow we get, maybe a briefing note, this is where it's at, planning to move here, planning to move there. I've heard Union Station, you've heard Metro Hall, Brian. There's a lot of rumors about it. And for something that is basically 18 months out, this is a pretty major move for this many employees. So I agree with you, Brian, but I'd like to have the whole context sent for a discussion and basically information update.
So we could, Dara, refer this to the board and ask for a report to the board? Is that the?
So the motion, and I've amended the motion in terms of the request to reference that the request is being made in light of the city's tenants first principles.
Yeah, that was
But
certainly in the background.
the manner in which I would anticipate that this matter would proceed is that the board at its meeting on July 28th would consider whether it would refer the matter to the Tenant Services Committee, and that at a subsequent meeting of the Tenant Services Committee, city staff would be asked to attend in order to provide that information to the Tenant Services Committee, which would then have the opportunity to escalate it to a subsequent board meeting.
I think this is our management bringing that to the board. They want to bring anybody along. They've been in those conversations.
Through you, Chair Smith.
I'd just like to know where that's at, Jag, please.
Through you, Chair Smith, that's the revision I was going to recommend, is that I think we need to work with the city because they need to understand our needs, and therefore we could outline a report. I know that city staff have offered to join for any meetings to provide assistance as far as clarifications and understanding. Councillor Fletcher, is that in line with what you were?
Yeah, you know, these decisions were made. Now the market has changed dramatically. So even the Housing Now sites are under a little pressure as to whether or not they'll actually proceed because of the cost to build. So is this still a realistic time frame to put this up on the market or not? I guess we need to hear how many employees are at this site, how many visitors that come to this site, what's the new site that's being proposed, how will that accommodate tenants, how will that accommodate staff that need to come in to the headquarters. I'm sure there's what kind of, you know, we're on a TTC stop, we're on a subway stop, but what's the requirement for parking, for vendors, for trucks, for just our fleet to access the site? I don't know if that's been put together from the TCHC side yet, if we have that very clear requirements for another site.
So through you, Chair Smith, and to Councillor Fletcher, we're having these discussions with the city department where we're walking through all of this. We haven't yet visited the site, but we've listed a number of questions, of which many of the ones that you've indicated, we've asked those questions. But once again, we just haven't visited the site, and we're working collaboratively with them to understand what the implications would be.
Can we at least get the list of
Absolutely.
requests? Maybe there's something to add. Brian's got something new to add there. Ease of tenants to access the corporation, because they're not all going to the hub. It's not where big decisions get made. There's deputations. There's a role at 931 Yonge that tenants feel that's a place. So I do think we have some time because of the market conditions. And Naram, you probably could confirm that there's issues out there even with current things that are in the pipeline. So there's not the big rush. So we should first establish not the big rush. Here's our list of requirements that you've put forward. Is there anything that you've missed? And then hopefully there'll be some synchronicity here for a move. But I'm not saying don't do it. I just think the due diligence is really critical on the part of the board, because eventually this should be going through.
Well, especially I think needs to be put through the tenant's first lens and ensure that it will improve our ability to work with our tenants going forward. So I have nothing against moving out of 931. If we're going to move, let's make it better, not worse.
So Jag, can we have that list? I think the board needs to hear this is underway, and then we need to hear if that's still a date that they'll be putting this on the market. I personally don't think that's the case and question that. And then what your criteria have been, so we can confirm that criteria going forward. I think that would be a good way to do that.
Absolutely.
We're not trying to stop the move. We're just trying to give you some backup and make sure the thinking is as deep as
We want it to
possible.
be a positive result.
Will do.
That's
If I could
better.
just ask for a bit of clarity, would you like that list ahead of the report back or as part of the report back?
I'd like it to be as part of the report back. I'd like to have a marker. You know, this is a corporation with a lot of employees and people that come to the building. So let's just take the example of the parking authority. They're going to have to move out of their Church Street location or their Queen Street. They don't have the number of people coming. They don't have tenants. If you've got a problem with your parking, you're not going to the headquarters of the parking authority. A lot of people come to TCHC. And so I think that is, I think we need to be tracking this and understand very clearly. So whether it's a briefing note, whatever you'd like to do, but I just think that it's an important piece of business that we need to have an eye on as a board.
Thank you.
So Dara, can you adjust the motion that I put forward to include those?
Yes, I may need to take that piece away, but certainly the expectation is that I did capture the intent to have management accompany city staff in providing that report, and we can,
No.
by the time this
I'm asking for management to make the report and city staff accompany them. This is,
So,
but that would be, you can figure that out, but
Yep.
So should it come through Tenant Services Committee or back directly to the board?
So the next step in this process would be to take the motion to the board. If the matter was to be directed to Tenant Services Committee, that should appropriately take place at the board level rather than at the governance committee level. So we'll prepare a revision of this motion for the board meeting on the 28th. And then the board can provide direction at that time as to how we should proceed.
Great. Would you like to move that motion, Paula?
yeah, sure, thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Is that Marcel?
Yep.
Thank you. All those in favor? The motion is carried. I think that's the last item of our meeting. So I'd look for a motion to adjourn the meeting. So Naram, do you want to move thank you. Could I have a seconder of the adjournment? Uba? Great, thank you. All those in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you very much for your input today, and we're going to be working ahead on some very important items, so I'm glad we were able to address them today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.